Hey everyone, strategy fans are in for a difficult time this fall. After all, at the beginning of November alone, Anno 117 and Europa Universalis 5 are launching, two genuinely massive titles that almost require you to take time off work. And in December, the 1.0 version of Pioneers of Pagonia is also being released, complete with a campaign. As if that weren't enough, Farthest Frontier, one of the best survival city builders, is leaving early access on October 23rd after just over 3 years, accompanied by a major update. My colleague Reiner was able to test this exclusively in advance, and in this video we'll tell you how much better Crate Entertainment's game has become, what kind of content has been added since the early access release, and where the gorgeous medieval game still has a few kinks to work out. Let's begin. Since some of you may not have heard of Farthest Frontier or may have already forgotten half of it, we'll quickly explain what this game is all about. Farthest Frontier is a colony simulation that stands out with its realistic and detailed graphics and introduces some unusual gameplay mechanics. The systems revolving around food are particularly unusually sophisticated. For instance, there is a proper seasonal cycle that you must prepare for with storage management. Food can spoil or be eaten by vermin, and during the warmer months you have to deal with crop rotation in the fields, which is only done in this way perhaps in a game like Farming Simulator. In addition to farming aspect, the gameplay mainly revolves around the production of consumer goods, which you use to meet your settlers' needs and allow their dwellings to advance through 5 tiers. This in turn unlocks new building types and further production chains. However, houses can only be upgraded if the surrounding attractiveness is also sufficient. For example, nearby industrial buildings significantly reduce the appeal, while all service buildings and many of the decorative objects like bushes, statues, and parks, they obviously have a positive impact. Unlike in series such as Anno, the residents do not advance in social rank. Instead, upgrading homes leads to more space and higher tax revenue. The quality of the dwelling also factors into settler satisfaction, which, along with things like clothing, entertainment, and religion, ultimately affects productivity, morale, disease resistance, and birth rate. Because labor is especially scarce for most of the time in Farthest Frontier, you are constantly striving for the right balance between construction material production, food reserves, fulfillment of needs, and income. And if all of that wasn't challenging enough, you also have to take care of your settlement's defense, otherwise bandits who occasionally show up will raid you, but if you'd rather take a more peaceful gameplay experience, you can simply disable the threat before starting the game. The military system, with its walls, towers, and troops, has been expanded and overhauled several times during early access, but remains rather superficial. The raiders march straight into your settlement, you drive them off, and that's it. It's essentially just meant to challenge you a bit and make you scrape together the equipment and upkeep for the soldiers. The game itself offers no real objective beyond mere survival. You don't complete a campaign or defeat all your enemies. Instead, you can continuously expand the settlement, exploit new resources, beautify your town with decorative objects, and what's brand new in the 1.0 update, work through a giant technology tree that, among other things, leads to a few particularly expansive monuments which grant you powerful perks. It can easily take over 20 hours to get there, most of which are spent at higher game speeds. Progress also involves a lot of waiting, which can become monotonous, especially for slightly more impatient players. Farthest Frontier can compensate for that for a while with its pretty visuals, which shine particularly in the weather effects, the seasons, the many meticulous animations, and the highly detailed building models. However, at the start of early access and beyond, this visual splendor was accompanied by significant performance issues. And now, although our test PC was still running at full throttle, the FPS remained largely constant at 60 compared to earlier instabilities. There are still a few stutters, especially when more is happening on screen, so we can say that implementation isn't perfect, but the game runs noticeably better. And there's positive news to report regarding the fundamental simulation as well. The individually simulated settlers have become smarter and interrupt their work much less often. This was a problem at the beginning of the early access phase because in Farthest Frontier, something is only produced if a settler finds their way to their workplace and clocks in for their shift. This means that commute times are crucial for your settlement's efficiency in this game. Therefore, a temporary shelter should always be near distant operations or mines where workers can spend the night. So, by making the workers smarter, the settlement also remains more stable, even if you do something else for a while or simply admire the game world. Generally, Farthest Frontier is complex but never mean to you. You won't easily get yourself into death spirals here. Even the raids, while annoying, won't immediately kill you, which doesn't mean you should ignore them. A few damaged buildings and an empty treasury will certainly set you back. The rest of the time, as you'll see in this video, you will frequently spend at game speed 3 or even 5. Often not much happens over the turn of the seasons, and at the same time, money, building materials, and labor time are notoriously scarce, so you often have to postpone even the decorating process. After all, statues and parks aren't exactly cheap. And so the pacing remains the game's biggest weakness even after the 1.0 update. A little slowness in progress isn't a bad thing and is often better for a settlement's organic development, but Farthest Frontier seems to have overdone it a bit. Even when fast-forwarding, there are too many boring periods. Wood planks and bricks are perpetually scarce, yet the labor force is already so stretched that you can't just arbitrarily place more producers on the job. Fortunately, the upcoming major update provides some relief for the waiting by tying settlement progress to the newly integrated research, which you can use to improve your settlement in terms of economy, military, and culture. The research points also generate agonizingly slow, but at least many of the total of 142 researches are generally very useful, and every new piece of knowledge is a minor highlight. And that now also motivates you to explore the map. Until now, this was essentially only necessary to find a new spot for clay, sand, or ore. Now you can retrieve religious relics and loot from ruins, abandoned camps, and bandits, and in doing so, you sometimes get a knowledge book that immediately grants an additional technology unlock. The world map did not suddenly evolve into the best element of the game though. Above all, the elevation profile continues to be an issue. The environment with its visually appealing slopes, hills, and mountains constantly prevents the placement of buildings. The leveling tool is only moderately helpful because it consumes a lot of labor time and creates unusual edges in the terrain, so what we definitely recommend is playing on flat maps. It saves your nerves and doesn't restrict your design so much. It's also a pity that the release version still doesn't support rivers, only lakes. You can now build bridges over them, but it looks a bit silly. But Farthest Frontier has held a strong ace up its sleeve since the start of early access with its roads, which don't have to run completely at right angles but allow for bends. This immediately results in more organic structures than in most city building games with their rectangular designs, but if you're still looking for more and Farthest Frontier construction isn't flexible enough for you, we recommend Foundation or the recently released Town to City from September, which is unmatched in terms of decoration flexibility. But I digress here. Overall, compared to the early access launch, you can expect few important innovations, but also a great many worthwhile improvements in performance, usability, and content. These include a multitude of new buildings, units, and animals such as chickens, goats, and horses. We also get cavalry units and additional decorative objects. There is now paper production, libraries, temples, monuments, achievements, and much more. Even if that doesn't sound like milestones, all the detailed adjustments taken together create a much more polished experience than 3 years ago. However, if you didn't like the fundamental gameplay back then, that's unlikely to change with the upcoming release. The devs just built up on the formula they already had. Ultimately, Farthest Frontier works best if you want to be challenged a bit, but also if you bring some patience into the mix, and if you enjoy watching your village slowly but surely become more beautiful and larger. And if you don't quite see yourself in that, like I mentioned at the beginning, there's plenty of strategies and city builders coming soon. Let us know in the comments which games from the genre you're looking forward to the most, and obviously if you're planning to play the Farthest Frontier. Thank you for watching. Take care.